What brought you here to the MRCSE?
Most literally, Christine asked me. I was invited in with her wonderful, sort of embarrassing phraseology as a wise elder slash storyteller, and maybe I'd like to be the slash. It's easy to think of sustainability as a very technical term. You know, if we just get the composting right, and then you peel it back and there's something under it, and it's how we think, it's how we feel, it's how we imagine. I am overflowing with admiration at people who have the technical skills and gifts, because you always admire the ones you don't have, you know, and how much they bring to the process. But the poets and the writers and the singers have something really central to bring to it also. I'm a writer and a humanities guy, and I come to science as a tourist and an admirer and appreciator, and I explore it in my way, but I'm not a systematic specialist. And I thought, oh boy, here's a lot of people who know things I would love to know. So I put the bait on my hook and I threw it out there, and I've been reeling in some good stories. Stories of resilience, stories of human interventions that took a species that was on the brink of disappearing and brought it back, or took a patch of land and said, well, this is damaged, this is impacted, this is throwaway now, it's waste, it's not wilderness anymore, it's not pristine. And instead of throwing it away, valuing it and saying, well, you know, if we do the right thing, even on this damaged land, good things will start to happen. And that's a natural fact that counterbalances the really horribleness of what is happening and what we've done around us. Is in the exact moment that we stop abusing nature, that is the exact moment that it starts coming back. It starts rebuilding itself. There is this seething, churning resiliency in the natural process that is beyond, literally beyond our ability to know. And so there's a tremendous amount of hopefulness hidden even in the things we don't know, maybe especially in the things we don't know. We're at an incredibly important moment in the history of the planet and in the history of culture. That what happens in the next 100 years is going to be incredibly difficult, challenging, horrifying, and we're going to need a lot of heart to face up to the task of, okay, here we are on a warming planet with thousands of dying species around us. I've seen students, when they come up against these facts, lose heart. I've seen them fold in on themselves and kind of go blank because it's too much to carry. I believe temperamentally and on every level that the game is never over, the story is never over, and hope is never gone. It can feel gone, but it isn't, because the brutal truth is life goes on. And there's a sort of horrifying cockroach resiliency in us and in the living world. And it's horrifying because it's horrifying how much suffering we can endure and might have to. And, you know, that toughness, it's good news. Resiliency is the word we were using today. And it's also really scary news. We don't know what we're going to have to walk through. So as a writer, I'm really looking for a language that captures some elements of that hope. I'm really convinced that really good cities, really good, livable, dense, human places are an important part of the formula for how we go forward. We need really good places to live in that don't require us to sprawl across the landscape. That don't require us to fill all the way from the hills to the ocean with diluted, suburban, not very dense, not very effective urban forms. That we can build effective, good human places that are dense and lively and delicious and attractive. And that will be one part of a formula that says we can also leave parts of the earth for agriculture, for open space, for forest, for other purposes besides sprawling out over it. So the task of making a really good city, with all of the intellectual and imaginative and infrastructure and political dimensions that entails, that is an engaging challenge that can easily absorb a lifetime or two or three. And I see it as a kind of environmentalism that we couldn't have thought of 30 years ago, because we thought city bad, wilderness good. I think story is central. I think it's more important even than the science, as important as that is, because it's what motivates people. A really good story frames up an explanation of the world and how the world works. And at that point it becomes something like a myth, a structuring, explanatory narrative. And although we can be very intellectual beings, I think underneath it there's a couple of storylines that we hold to that we think are kind of what the world is and how it works. And they may be conscious, they may be unconscious. The storyline that governed the environmental movement for its first 100 years was a story of losing Eden. It's the John Muir formulation that wilderness, untouched nature, pristine, virgin is the word he obsessively uses, is the touchstone of value. When people arrive on the scene, it immediately begins to degrade. It's like the moment of being cast out of Eden. In the last 10 or 15 years, we've shifted from that definition of what the environmental movement needed to be about. And we've started including people in the equation. And we started acknowledging, people are nature too. We are it. It are we. And once you go there, boy, those old either-or categories break down fast and leave us with a lot of questions. The Eden story was a good, clear narrative and very powerful because it's been embedded in our culture for a couple thousand years. It's in there even when we don't know it's in there. It's in our way of thinking about nature. We will go to this mournful place almost instantaneously about, oh, that was a good place and now it's ruined. Oh, well, the bulldozers got there. Oh, they put houses in. Oh, it used to be great, now it's terrible. So what's the story that replaces that Eden myth? What is the story that has humans in the picture and instead of locking us into a hopeless nostalgia, directs us toward a hopeful engagement? What's the story that teaches us to be present with pain and loss, not as the whole picture, but as part of the picture, and that balances the pain and loss with regeneration and rebirth and creativity and participation? I think our job as environmentalists, our job as environmental storytellers, has to be to look for, to find, and to give voice to those stories as, in some ways, the precondition to an effective environmentalism for the next century. There's a random, dangerous rightness abroad in this wide, shining world. It's a rightness, not a correctness. We don't need so much to counter other people's errors as to bring the light and joy of that right and beautiful world, what we desire for our planet and ourselves, what we are doing instead of hating and denying and bombing. If I live to be my parents' age, I'll have 3 more decades to help Portland develop its answers. how we'll live in a warming world without cheap oil. Will it still be a good life in 2039? Every day in my adopted hometown, we struggle, we argue, we build, and make choices toward a yes. A yes that might someday be useful all over our swaggering, sweltering, beloved land. Our job is to work on what we love daily, in detail, with precision and determination.